Hello. Welcome to UX and Data. Welcome to the last event of 2018. I'm super excited to see such a great turnout. We have such a special event tonight with the founder of UX and Data. So Matt is the founder of UX and Data, but in addition to that, he's the VP of Product at Development Guild, which is a consulting firm that works with nonprofit organizations. He's also the lecturer and class designer of UX and Design of Analytical Apps, which is a class that's taught at Columbia University's Master of Science in the Applied Analytics program. And I, along with 5 other associates who are here tonight, have been teaching alongside Matt since the spring of 2017. So without further ado, take it away, Matt.
This is my son. His name is Leon. He is 10 years old. He loves to play video games. He lives in New Jersey, and he wanted to build a computer. And I came up with a deal with him. I said, look, I want you to spend some time with this game called Dragon Box. If you finish this game, Dragon Box, it's a math game, we can build a computer. We'll build a computer together. This game, Dragon Box, is really amazing. I love talking about Dragon Box. If you may even see me playing Dragon Box sometimes. It's an algebra game. Here's how it starts off. Doesn't look anything like algebra. It's got a bunch of monsters, a couple of boxes, but it slowly introduces little concepts behind algebra, how you're trying to sort of equalize an equation, how you're really trying to solve for x. In this case, it's just this little dragon guy over here in a box. He represents x. And slowly they start to unveil how it's actually, there's a little bit of algebra in there, and some numbers and things like that, and they start putting in some symbols. But the kids are learning the principles of algebra as they're going along, and they're having a really good time. Now, my son, when he did this, he was 11? No, he was 10 he was 10 when he did this. And this is what he was doing after an hour. After a few hours, these are the kinds of equations that he was doing. My son is smart, but like a lot of this is coming from the app, and how well the app was done. And in 2 days, he was done with the app. Boom, he loved it. He's like, Dad, let's go make that computer. And I was like, that's my boy, let's go do it. So I said, great, you learned how to balance pretty complex equations in algebra in 2 days. This is gonna be no sweat. I want you to go figure out the PC parts. So building a PC is kind of complicated, but not crazy complicated. There is about 10 things you need. You need a case, you need to have a CPU, a disk drive, etc. It's not like an unlimited number of possibilities. But I kept asking him, Leon, did you figure out the parts? And he's like, no, I'll get to it later. Literally like a half a year went by, and my kind of nudging him, like I really wanted to build a computer with him, right? That was going to be fun for me too, and we weren't getting to the other fun part. And he finally said, Dad, can we do it together? This is too hard. This is way too hard. So I said, okay, fine. We'll go to the Micro Center. We'll pick out the parts, and we built it over the course of a weekend. And he has a computer. He's probably on it right now. Yeah, we're getting a nod over here from Mom. So he's got his computer. But here's my question for you. And this is where we get to the feature part of the organization. Our sponsors aren't the only ones with presents. And I'll train you a little bit. When you see that sock icon, that means for your participation, I'm going to be throwing out Columbia socks. Now these are highly collectible items. You may not be aware that Columbia is actually well known for their textile collections, but these are very, very good. I've got literally 2 bags full of them. So I don't know if I'll need it or not. But let's get started. I'd love to get your participation. Why do you think it's easier for Leon to learn algebra than to build a PC? Hi, Daria. Why do you think?
Because during Algebra was in a contained environment where he was given the tools he was needed versus the PC has unlimited sort of environmental factors.
PC had some unlimited, let me underline and bold that, unlimited environmental, I don't want to spell in front of the crowd, environmental barriers. Okay, yeah, I would agree with that. There is only 9, but there's a lot of different ways. There's lots of different types of chips, lots of different types of memory. You need to get the chip that goes into the motherboard, but still, it's only about 10 parts. So here's the tough part. Keep raising. You will randomly get a pair of socks, so you won't. I see one right over here. Hi there.
Hi. There were like small concrete steps that your son could follow to learn algebra.
Small concrete steps. Okay, great. Right. It wasn't like I have to figure out everything. Building a PC, like, it can be a very frustrating weekend when all of a sudden you realize, oh, I did it wrong. And an expensive one for dad also. Okay. What do we have over here?
Immediate feedback.
What?
Immediate feedback. Kind of that building on that building block approach, right?
Immediate feedback. Yeah, I think that's great too. I think it's time for a pair of socks. Okay. Who's got another one? So, good catch. All right. What do we have next?
The game offered. What's the word I'm looking for?
Give me back those socks.
The game pretty much didn't really depend on willpower as much as the other one. The game was more like an activity of fun, whereas like coming up with the computer was more like you have to use willpower, and that gets pretty easy.
It's fun. Building a computer was not sustained fun. Okay, and I think we'll just do one more. Anything else? Hi there.
It sounds from the description as if the sourcing you had to keep figuring out which piece for this type, which piece for that type. So you did have the sense of little achievements right away.
Okay. So needed more wins, like something to keep him on track. Some feedback to tell him he was on track. These are all good things, and I like all of them. All right, another question. All right, and even before I ask this, I'm just curious, like, who here has had anything to do with analytics in the last year? That could be great. Okay, so what are some barriers that you think for people to learn and use analytics? And what? Oh, you already got socks, right?
I don't need them if you don't want to do it.
No, it's okay. Did you? Well, okay. Well, here. I think it's hard for me to say no after that. But okay, what was that?
I feel like when because I think a lot of like UI stuff for analytics, and the biggest barrier for me is always like the jargon or the argot, like there's a lot
jargon,
of,
yeah.
Yeah, and just communicating what they need to be. They're used to this vocabulary that I'm not, and so to them it's like a very simple explanation, and to me it's nonsense.
Yeah, I'm a big believer that there's a big jargon problem, and each platform has its own set of. We'll often rename the same thing in different places. It's a problem, hard to learn in one place. I'm going to look for someone from this far side of the room. Anyone from over here have any ideas about what are barriers for people to learn and use analytics? No.
They don't know where to start.
Don't know where to start. Hard to start. Don't know where to start. Very good. How about on this side of the room?
Data modeling is awful.
Data modeling. Data modeling hard. Like there's a lot to know beforehand, right? Like there is a sustained amount of work to be done. Do you think any? I'm going to throw a couple of things out here if that's all right. I think some of it may be cultural. Like I literally had a pitch for this meetup once where somebody came and started the pitch with, well, everybody hates math. And I'm like, whoa, you may be pitching that to the wrong audience here. But there is like this sort of like a cultural barrier to bring people into math. Not everybody necessarily feels comfortable with math and analytics, and maybe they haven't been successful before with it.
I don't think we can call it cultural per se.
Yeah, it's not cultural. It's probably wrong. Like I actually would say there's some. I'm going to put two. I'm going to break it out. Maybe they haven't been successful with it before, right? I'll break that into.
That's a great way to put it.
But I do think there might be like sometimes a cultural thing. It's not like we are like math analytics woohoo. Like that's not where we are as a culture. I think that there is like a truthy aspect to that.
Possible, I'm not arguing, I'm just questioning.
Okay, but I think it does make sense to break it up a little bit. Okay. Okay, let's do one more. What would happen if analytics was accessible and easy to use for everyone? And even more so, I'm going to change it. And they wanted to use it.
People will use it more.
Yeah, that definitely. People would use it more.
And I think they'll find it useful in different aspects of life.
Okay, yeah.
Could make more informed decisions.
More informed decisions, definitely. You can just start yelling them out, it would be great. Oh.
Less control.
What's that?
Less control.
Do you see
Less control.
there's less control? Who would have less control?
For example, if everybody can have access to it, one might interrupt another one's work.
Okay, all right. So less control for like data access. Yeah.
Gatekeepers would have less.
Yeah, definitely. That's right. Gatekeepers have less access. What do we think about it from like it's time for some socks. What do you guys think about from like an industry perspective? What would happen, say, like education? Who's going to yell it out first?
Decreased bias.
Decreased bias. Well, okay, well that's good. But what about any specific industries that you think might be affected? Sorry, a little louder.
Marketing?
I heard marketing. How in marketing? Who said marketing? Sorry. Sorry. I picked socks because I thought they would be pretty non-lethal. So marketing, tell me, so how do you think marketing would change if, not just a few people had it, not just like 1-2% of people, but everyone were really into it and had access? How would that change the industry?
The companies who are doing marketing will have easier access to the data that they want to pull out of like platforms like Google, BigQuery. Like it'll be easier for them to get out the results that they want.
Mm-hmm. Is anybody else here in marketing? We have a couple of people. What do you think would happen if everybody was comfortable with analytics and had access to the insight from it? Just yell it out.
Advertising would be cheaper.
Advertising would be cheaper. Okay. And why is that?
Well, so my company, we primarily make money by analyzing audiences and how effective they are compared to what people want to bid on. And there's also a lot of fraud in that area. So I feel like if people could analyze it more easily themselves, then it would cut out a lot of middlemen.
All right. So I'm going to say that companies would. I'm going to say the bonus side of that was that companies would have better access and understanding of marketing and be able to leverage those findings in all sorts of places, right? So the people whenever you have all these like in-house marketing places, they want to know what are their demographics like, who are they marketing to. If everyone felt empowered to go figure that out on their own, wow, you see a lot more insight within the whole product creation line. Hey, back there.
Fewer ads, and also only ones you're interested in seeing.
Could you speak up a bit?
Fewer ads, and only the ones that you're actually interested to see.
Ooh, how about that? Fewer ads, and only the ones you like, or the ones you're interested in. Okay, very good. All right, let's talk about another industry. How about
Finance.
finance? Great. Okay, if everyone had access to finance, how would the world to analytics and was into it and was able to pull their own insight from? How would that change?
Everything from
the actuarial calculations in insurance
Mhm.
to basically the skim that banking applies. to
Okay,
interest
so,
rates,
yeah.
to rate of return for investments.
And why is all that stuff coming in?
Because it's very difficult for most people to understand
Okay.
these sort of basic concepts or to understand an insurance product.
But
Okay.
we're still assuming people are critical thinkers, right? Like, just because you understand analysis doesn't mean, like,
Yeah. Let's give people a benefit of being critical thinkers. Yeah. So I think people are pretty good at it. All right, let's get like one more industry. Do you have an industry for me?
Supply chain. I was thinking manufacturing, but
Oh, manufacturing. Okay, all right, great. So let's say everybody in the supply chain for manufacturing suddenly has access to analytics. What's going to
I mean,
happen?
cost of goods plummet.
How is that?
I mean, efficiencies of shipping.
Efficiencies. Okay.
That itself is a multi-billion-dollar industry.
Okay, great. Why do you think what's gumming things up right now for shipping?
Predicting demand, as well as optimizing trade routes.
Okay. So this was a great start. I'm just gonna throw out a couple, like one random sock. Oh, you got it, man! Congrats. I didn't even know it was going in that direction. It just happened. My point is, like, there's a lot of like opportunity in the world to make analytics available to everyone, and that there's a lot of barriers right now. And the purpose of the class that we teach is actually trying to figure out how do you tear down those barriers, find value in that data that all these organizations are amassing, and making it available to many more people, getting a lot more value out of that data. Okay, great. And so the name of the class is UX and Design, Analytical Applications, and that's what we're building, analytical applications. And we think of analytical applications as things that help people make data-driven decisions. We think of analytical applications as enabling self-service analytics, so you don't have to go rely on somebody else, so it's democratized. And we think of analytical applications as being something that's available to everyone, or at least the level of, if you feel comfortable with a spreadsheet or you've used a spreadsheet ever, you should be comfortable doing a much deeper level of analysis as well. Now we do this in the context of user experience and like building applications. How do you make this thing easier to work with? And, in the context of the class, we define user experience as usability, functionality, and delight of a product. And so we are trying to make people actually enjoy and use these analytical applications. It's a challenge sometimes, but it's a great deal of fun too. It is a design class. It is in the Master of Applied Analytics, which is in Master of Science program. It is, and it's a little unusual like that. And it is a critique-driven class. We do a bit of theory, particularly in the front of the class, and then we do a lot of projects, and we break up into small groups for critiques. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a second. My students are studying analytics. They are not designers, or they have not taken a design, most of them have not taken a design class before. You'll see that there may be some rough edges around the aesthetics of what what I'll be showing today. But they bring something else that's so fascinating for these applications, because they understand the mechanics underneath it at a pretty deep level. And so we're trying to say, look, take the expertise you've been developing in the other classrooms and see how can we share that with others through design. These are my associates. These are fantastic people. I have a bunch of these associates here. Let's see. So I know I saw at least half of these folks here. I'm going to just run through them. Juan, are you here? I don't think Juan made it. He is a very busy man with some young children right now. Juan is the VP of product at Validately. Validately is a great local usability testing platform that is here in New York. And in general, like the associates I have, I feel very lucky. Part of it is because Columbia is great. I'm able to bring in pretty much anyone I want. We've got Ben. I know I saw Ben. Ben, where are you? Yep, there's Ben. Hi, Ben.
Hi.
So Ben, can you tell people like what really quickly what your background is and where you're coming from?
Yeah, I lead an insights and analytics team. I work at Jet.com, which is a local startup here
in Hoboken, actually. Before that, I was at Amazon, and before that, I was at Microsoft.
Yeah, so we're really happy to have Ben on board. We have Chi here. Chi Zhang, where are you? Hi, Chi. How you doing? Hi. Can you can you say hi everyone and tell everyone what you're up to?
Yeah, I'm Chi. Currently, I'm working in Capital One commercial banking team and building the design system. And before I joined Capital One, I worked with Matt in a data visualization company called UX+Data. So we are building the data visualization analytical platform.
Great. Thanks, Chi. Is Carrie here? I know she had conflicting events tonight. Okay, she's at a Christmas party. I know I saw Rick around here. Hey, Rick.
Hi, Matt. Hi, I'm Rick. I'm the Chief Experience Officer at a company called Cabbage. And so I run the product and the UX function there.
Great. And Rick, you just came there from Capital One, is that
I was
right?
also at Capital One, yeah. But then I abandoned Chi and Kim, who you'll hear about next.
Okay. Thanks, Rick. And of course, we've got Kim. Hi, Kim.
Hi. You heard from me earlier. I'm part of the commercial bank at Capital One.
Okay, great. Okay, so these are my friends and associates. I'm always happy to see them. I'm glad they're here today. Here's something I consider an analytical application. This is Tableau. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with it. It's something where you can load up a lot of data and allows you to use visualizations to make sense out of it. It's a pretty powerful application. We're going to be talking about similar types of applications later today. Consider Bloomberg Terminal to be a very successful local analytical application, something that keeps people incredibly informed. Do we have anyone from Bloomberg here? Usually we have someone from Bloomberg here. No, nobody today? Okay, we can. Well, Bloomberg does some pretty amazing things. In their terminal is actually incredibly fast. Speed is such an incredible part of user experience that a lot of people don't really talk about so often. We'll talk about it a little bit tonight too. But Bloomberg, the latency, how fast it gets data to people, helps them make really good decisions, and it's incredibly important. And this one is from a great New York news organization called ProPublica. And Cece Wei, Cece talked at the other meetup, right? So Cece is the news editor, and she creates all sorts of applications that allow people to go in and explore data, sort of like explorables. Really interesting stuff that comes out of ProPublica. I consider these as little analytical applications as well. So those are a few examples. We'll see some more today. A little bit more about who we're talking to in class. Can I get a time check? Can I get a quick time check? 7:28. 7:28? Are you kidding me? Okay, we're going to go really fast. All right. Okay. So in terms of like data proficiency of people, we can see at one end there's folks that are not at all proficient, and this is a histogram of like where's the general data proficiency of people. And at the other end, we have very proficient. On the very proficient side, I think of like our notebook Tableau users. In the class that we work with, like our target users are pretty much everybody else except for like the people who are going to run away, who want to have absolutely nothing else to do with data. And we see that as a pretty big and interesting market to bring data to. There's 4 foundations we talk about in class. The first one is data exploration. Like how can you make it so if you've got a lot of data, how can you make sense out of it? How can you slice through it? How do you find the insight? That's most of the technical stuff in the class is in that part too. But really it's about helping helping users find their own insight. Another one is data transparency. How important making sure that like if someone has findings, that the data supporting it, that they can go validate it, and when they share those findings with other people, they can validate it as well. And that goes for the algorithms that they use in their applications too. We do not want any magic in the applications. Which sometimes people talk about magical applications. When people talk about financial stuff, they want to be able to validate what's going on. They also know that the data is often corrupt and messed up, and they want to go make sure and check it out themselves. So we talk about data transparency quite a bit. Embracing social. So working with data is not something you do on your own. You have to come up with some findings and share it with other people. How do you share it with other people? I did a study once, a little study where I asked people who had used a spreadsheet in the last 30 days, I said, how many of you shared their spreadsheet? And 90% of them had said they had shared the last spreadsheet they made. Like, data is social, you should optimize your application for it as well. And the last thing is we talk about the UX methodologies, which I'm going to kind of assume most of you are familiar with. But that's usability testing, wireframing, talking to users, all that wonderful stuff. Okay, so now we're going to dive into one of the foundational things for creating an analytical application. Now, this is a pretty simple concept, but it allows exploration to scale very, very well. Here is about as simple a table as I could possibly make. All right, we've got 5 columns and 5 rows of data, and this is for a company that specializes in selling hats and pets. All right. So, oh wait, that was a sock icon I saw there. As head of sales, what would be interesting here if you worked at hats and socks? What's something you might want to see within this data?
That the lightest object is also the most profitable, possibly.
Interesting. So there's okay. Anything else? What do we have?
Whether there is a correlation between the amount of hats sold and pets.
Is there a correlation between hats and pets? Tell me a little bit more.
Do people who buy more hats also buy more pets?
Oh, okay, great. There you go. That deserves some socks. How about anybody from the back rows? I love trying to throw things really far away when they're very light. Anybody else? What else can we do with the data? Anyone with an analytics background? We'll have some simple things.
Who buys bats and fezzes?
Who buys bats and fezzes? Nice catch. Okay. I'm going to say there's a couple of other things in here too. You might want to look at maybe you want to see maybe you want to do some simple calculations in here too. Maybe you want to see what do you sell the most of? Like what type of thing do you sell? Do you sell like a lot of caps versus a fez? Which states do you sell the most stuff to? What's the average cost of an item going to a state? Like these are kind of basic types of questions we might want to ask out of our data. So we have our data tab here. Let's take a look at what our chart tab would look like. I just clicked over there on the chart, and we see a bar chart. Now, we've lost some of our data when we did that, right? When we go into a chart, usually there's a certain number of pieces of data you can squish into one type of chart. In this case, we have department and price. It works. Okay, I can see. There are some hats that cost more than others, but I don't know what kind of hat it is off the top of my head. Okay, so it works at 5 rows of data. We can kind of make sense out of it. We can even do like the math in our head, right? This is really little data, but I just want to show you like the average price of a pet would be $15. Great. What's that again?
So that was something. Come on, listen.
Okay. Well, okay. How about I'll ask one with 3 rows. What is the average price of a hat? What is the average price of a hat? This one's. I did the numbers to make them easy to do in your head. What was it? Average price of a hat? Did I hear 1,500 for average price of a hat?
No, like about 15, 16.
So hat. Okay, so 10 plus 10 plus 29, 49 divided by 3 would be
Almost 17.
17. Okay, that's. Okay, that's
1633.
Okay, well, we'll see where it goes. Someplace like that. And, all right, okay, great. Anyways, we can kind of do most of it. Maybe I didn't do the math quite right on there myself. Look what happens when you go to 10 rows. Just going from 5 rows to 10 rows, it suddenly gets hard.
Yeah, you can't do it.
What's that?
I say you can't do it anymore when you have a lot of data.
Yeah, and this is 10 rows. That's my point. Like, this is not what most people would consider big data. Right? That it's just 10 rows, and already we're getting beyond what's easy for us to quickly make a decision about. But it may as well be big data. Let's say when we get down to charts, the charts don't scale so well anymore. We can't even put the labels in because the bars are too small. There's really like limits to what you can do in these sorts of applications. Think of what happens when you have a lot more data. If you start encroaching on big data, if you have 100 times more data, well, this chart starts looking funny. The table is really not a lot of use. If If you have 1,000 times or 1,000,000,000 times more data, it's a totally different situation. A chart is not necessarily tenable. That doesn't mean that there's not insight that you want to get out of it. And there's a very simple solution. And this simple solution is what pretty much all visual analytics platforms are built on. If we come over here, we can say, all right, what if we group some of this stuff, right? So we're going to group this data by hat. And okay, we basically clicked on this thing over here, group, turned it on, all right? Now it's grouped by department. All right, so basically said, okay, we're going to take anything where there's a unique value, and we're just going to have one row for that thing. So there's one unique value for hat, one unique value for pet, and that's that. And it doesn't quite know what would go into like price or kilogram, right? Because now it's trying to. There's multiple things there's not a single unique value there. What do you think would happen if we tried to click on plus under price?
It would give you options for whether to average or.
Say that really loud.
It would give you options for whether to average or take the median.
Yeah, right. It'll do a little bit of math for you, and it'll say, look, let's. Oh, you already got it before you even showed the sock icon. It'll say, look, you can do an average of every row. You can get the minimum value that came out of every row. You can get the maximum value. And here, when we click the plus, it automatically put average and price. And what we've done here is we've taken 5 rows and we squished it down to 2 rows. But that would also, if all you sold were hats and pets, you could take 1 billion rows and squash it down to 2 rows as well. And that's what we have here. We have our hat and pet bar chart. Now, this scales really, really well to many, many rows of data. And I kind of think of it as like an MRI for data, right? It allows you to look at it from a lot of different viewpoints. And there's this next part is one of the fundamental things, and it's actually a requirement for the class. So any type of thing that we do in class, for every application, we expect there to be 3 distinct types of views. One where we say we have the raw data, that's the truth, and people are not going to believe a lot of the stuff that's in there if we don't have the raw data available. There's some cases where you can't show it, but try to show it if you can. We have an aggregate, which is where you've done this transformation in the table view, the one that we just saw. And then we take that and put it into a chart. And the aggregate is sort of like a Rosetta Stone in between the raw and the chart. It's hard to understand where the chart came from unless you have the aggregate to look at the raw. And it's almost like being able to go in a map, be able to zoom in and out, or with a calendar, you can look at things in minutes, and days, and months, and years, and so on. All right, so what are qualities that you may value in an analytical app? If you were out purchasing an analytical app, what would you be looking for? What would you look for?
Nice friendly learning curve.
A nice friendly learning curve, that sounds great. What do we have over here?
I was going to say usability of the interface.
Usability.
Setting it up for
Depth.
a team or a company or a department.
Super easy. Super easy. What do we have?
When a lot of functionality isn't buried behind too many menus or clicks.
It's not okay. So it doesn't take too long to get to it. I saw something way back there. I love hearing from the back row. It's so unusual to hear from the back row.
Easy to access.
Whoa! Can you please pass that, sir? Sorry. What's that?
Easy to access data in many ways.
Easy to access data in many. So
I
like.
want to be able to join data sets from totally different data stores.
Oh wow! I wish everybody said that. But I want to be able to access. So many ways to access data, construct your data set. Interesting. Okay. What do we have?
Accurate.
Accurate. Okay.
Not only pretty, but accurate.
What? Say again.
Not only pretty, but accurate.
Pretty and accurate.
Surfaces the most insightful data, or data that creates the most important insights.
Services the most important insights. Okay, excellent. So it's got to be particularly relevant. All right, let's get 2 more.
I'm able to draw conclusions quickly, even if I don't have a background in analytics.
Able to draw conclusions quickly, even if not able to draw Sorry, I heard what you said. Able to draw conclusions quickly. The next question comes like, how can you best evaluate a lot of these qualities? Now, this is not going to work for all those qualities, but I think for about 80% of the qualities I heard, I think that if you look at the UI for configuring the aggregate view on various platforms, that thing we just looked at, that kind of thing where we had like that area on the left where we said how we want to group on. That's going to tell you a lot about who the application is for, what their priorities were. I'm going to show you a couple of applications. You can tell me what you think about that afterwards. This is an application called Zoom Data. In Zoom Data, it starts with what I call a chart-centric orientation. Here's a pie chart, and it shows us in the bottom. Whoop! Don't do that. All right. You'll see that there is we see right away what it's grouped by and how we're calculating the various numbers too. I'd like for that not to happen. All right, there we go. So if I click on group, it brings up a list of what I can populate that with. Right? Now, this is what I would call something really, I consider this to be an extremely simple model. We have a pie chart, we're going to stick with the pie chart, we're going to change one piece of data, and we're going to be able to get a new view. We're going to go from user income to hotel city, I think, and the pie chart changes. Right? Very, very simple. You can think of, like, who do you think this is for? It is for business people, but is it for a data scientist? No, it's not for a data scientist. It's for that, let's see if we can get analytics in the hands of more people type of crowd. Here's Tableau, all right? And you can see on the left, we see all the various types of data, pieces of data. If we want to configure a chart, we have an incredible amount of variation that we can complete. So this is a trellis chart. Trellis charts are amazing, and Tableau is particularly adept at it. But it is really complex. If we look at this, like, you need to know exactly where you're going to pull these pieces of data to. This is all about how you're configuring the data, right? You don't even know necessarily what the chart's going to end up with. Who is this tool for? It's for analysts. And that looking at how the data is configured is going to tell you a lot about who and how an application is made for. We spend a lot of time in the class that we teach figuring out what's the best way to configure data for the application you're building. There's a lot of other things we talk about too, and that's really just sort of scratching the surface. I'm going to show a couple of applications. Thank you, Kim. And we'll run through a couple. This first one is from Open Data. New York City has an incredible open data program, right? Biggest municipal open data program in the world, right? So we have more data that we share. I think it's law. We have someone from Open Data here. Where's Jen? Is Jen going to wave? Hi, Jen. Is it accurate that every department is required to release their data? Yeah, so every department in the city is required to release their data. It's pretty amazing stuff. This is a tool that is available to everybody. You could go online and use it. It's provided by New York City. It's sort of like a Tableau kind of visual analytics platform. We were lucky to have them come in, and they talked about what New York City Open Data was up to and what the 301 department was up to. And we got to work with their application. And what we did first is we ran some usability tests on it. And we got some interesting insight. I'm going to show you one of the student projects that came out of modifying, making this application a little more usable. This is what we would consider a warm-up app in the class. It's the first project we do together. When we go into it, we're going to see that it is, let me see if I can get this. There we go. Can you see that a little better? Is that okay? You can see that it's organized to filtering, visualizing, and joining data. And we'll go click into filter, and right away it describes, hey, this is what a filter is. A filter is a quick way to display only the information you want and remove all the other data from the view. I have to tell you, a surprising number of people confuse what a filter is with the group by. Being clear about it does nothing but help. So we'll go click into it a little bit further. We have a long list of attributes you can choose from. We're going to say we want to only look at agencies that are in TLC, and it tells us what has changed right away. Very nice. All right, so that was all fairly simple to do. There's this one other thing that comes up with the New York City data set. Sometimes it can be very, very slow. And this actually came up a lot in the usability testing. It's the number one thing that came up, that people were doing a change and then they were just waiting for anything to happen. So what this student did was she built in a game to play while waiting for the results to come in. So there's some little, let's see, you can go over, you can jump over the little things, and game over, your score is 2. The average score today, such an analytics game, I love it. Average score today at 32, best score in zip code. If someone who's not like an analytics major didn't make this game, I don't know who did, but I'm quite fond of it. And you can put your zip code in and see what the best score is in your zip code. Okay, so there we go. So we see how like usability testing right away gets things a lot easier to work with. Somebody mentioned about terminology before, about how hard the terminology was for a lot of folks, and usability testing especially is super useful for that as well. Here's another example from Xiaobo, a student from this past summer. And I am particularly fond of how she organized this one. Major actions along the top: filter, sort, join, and visualize. Very clear. And I'm gonna click through the filter a little quickly because we're running close on time. And she added a filter. She's going to add a sort. But I want you to notice that it starts listing like the modifications that happen to the data set up here. She did the filter, and each transformation gets listed. She can cancel one if she wants. She can add more. But the thing is that there's a great deal of transparency in terms of what are the changes that she's putting into the application. So somebody else comes along, if she shares it with somebody else, you can see all those things that have kind of accrued along the top. Those transformations are all super clear to whomever else is coming along to view the application. She also has what we call the 3 views, very explicitly laid out here. So we have our table view, which is sort of like the aggregate that we talked about before. We have all rows, and you'll notice that there's some crappy looking data in here. And this is one of the reasons why people need to look at raw data. They need to know the actual level of quality. You see there's a lot of columns that are missing. There's going to be things that are malformed. That's just the reality of data, and making sure that people can see that for themselves is actually really, really useful. And our visualization itself. Let's take a look at application worked on with Bloomberg. So Bloomberg does this event called the Data for Good Exchange. It's a really amazing free event that happens in August, and we worked with them to design some apps to be used in that area. One of the things that is really interesting and exciting to me about the Data for Good Exchange is you have a room with, I think it's 700 people, and they're all really interested in a particular subject. And so what we were talking about, and what was the driver for the applications we build, is what happens if, imagine you're all at the conference, and you all had access to the same analytical tools to look at the data that may be presented by somebody. Let's say somebody's talking about saving whales or something like that, and you all could look at the data and socially analyze it together and be able to talk about it within the same room. And that's what we talked about. So this one is an iPhone app called, iPhone app from Victor. You notice these are all mobile apps. It starts off showing, hey, what's going on right now? So imagine you're at this conference, it's a data conference, and somebody's presenting this sort of whales presentation I mentioned before. Click over here, you see exactly what's being shown on the screen behind whoever's presenting. But you can go and explore it. This would be whale spottings off of Dominica. I can go explore, I see the actual data. I can add my filters. I'm gonna put a couple filters in here. I'm going to put something in about date spotted. I'm going to put in, say that I want the date spotted to be between a couple of dates, and apply it. And all of a sudden I'm able to see, oh look, whale spottings are actually only happening off the tip of the island up here. That's interesting. It's something I want to share with others. Let me annotate it. All right, so be able to share my insight. I've got the data, but now I need to put my own meaning behind it and put it in a message to other people. And then it goes to a central place where the most interesting ideas are being aggregated by folks. So very interesting, neat way of how can you put something like Tableau in your pocket? How do you do it socially? How do you do it in a shared setting as well? This one's from student Sarah Garman. Sarah did such an amazing set of functionality in this application. So here we go. In some ways similar to the last one we looked at, it's showing the slides that are being presented in that sort of setting. This one's big data in the environment. And we want to go explore that data. But from here, maybe we want to play with the data a little bit, right? We've done something interesting. We want to annotate it. We're going to just put a little note on it. Putting a note in raw data, I love the idea of doing that. And after we've played with it a little bit, click on something called InstaShare. In InstaShare, we'll do a couple of things. This might be a little hard to read, so let me try to zoom in on it. So you can tap it with other people immediately in the vicinity. So in this case, it'd be everybody else who was at the conference with you. They could see what you're working on. They could riff on it. They could take it. They could modify it. Could do all those interesting things. Or you could share it with the entire conference and notify the presenter. Or if the presenter then gets access to it. So at this point, the presenter might actually see what Polly has done, bring it up on stage, and now it's a point of conversation for everyone. And I'm just going to jump into the next one. Okay. Last one from Bloomberg we're going to look for. We've got Teresa. Hi, Teresa. So Teresa did an interesting, different approach on it. Landscape. Landscape I thought was so interesting, particularly for looking at the raw data. She has a bit more of a dashboardy look here, but you can see they all have this functionality where they're connecting with the live event. It's a live stream over here. We're going to click on Go to Data. It's going to bring us over here, but she's also doing this thing that comes up in a lot of data applications. I just want to call it out. It affects so many different apps. There's the natural break in the application is right here. There might be another 20 columns this way, but you wouldn't know except for the fact that she put an arrow there. And I really like the way that she handled that particular situation. You can scroll that way, we'll scroll back, and we end up back over here. We can also, let me go back. So we are also going to click on Comment Live, which is a very explicit interface, mainly for talking with the presenter in front, but with more annotation tools to talk with them about. Excuse me. Okay. Last project we're going to talk about is the Google project. And Kim, I'm going to be about 4 more minutes, all right? So I'm trying to get through it fast. And the main thing we talked about was like analytics diagnostics. So one interesting thing, like Google has so much data, right? And you can imagine a database with just like many thousands of columns of things that they're tracking. But if something happens, they don't always know why something happens. Let's say traffic in YouTube all of a sudden drops in California. Well, they know that it's dropping, but why? Now, they actually are tracking enough data that they might be able to do some automated diagnostics to figure out what the actual problem is. And that's the tool that the students made. They made an analytics diagnostics tool that was meant not for a data scientist, but somebody else who maybe just be like working at Google at the time. I'm going to show you a product by Jessie Liu, or an example from Jessie Liu. And she starts off in her application by showing a line chart where it's just showing the difference between today and yesterday. So here's yesterday, and here's today, and whoa, there's something going wrong with traffic. Why is that going? And we can come over, we can actually drag our selection over here, and drag it. Oops. And now we're actually focused on these 2 diverging points. And what it's going to do, those 2 diverging sort of timelines, it's actually going to see what the difference is between those 2 areas. It's going to automatically say, okay, let's go see where the biggest delta is between the biggest change in all our different columns of data between today and yesterday during those 2 time periods. Pulls them up automatically in a single, easy to browse through page. I'll bring up the biggest ones and say, look, there's like the viewer city has a natural emergency, 23% of them changed. Viewer city evacuated 19%. It's actually saying, look, there's some anomalies that are coming up, in this time period, they look like they're related to forest fire, their bandwidth's been cut off, things like that. And then provides tools that allow the user to zoom right into that set of data, explore it a bit, figure out what else is going on, and of course have access to the 3 views of data that we've been talking through. The last project I'm going to show you tonight is really, really interesting. A bit different, because it just kind of starts off with insight. This is similar sort of solution at one point. We're looking at yesterday related to today. And you can see all of a sudden traffic drops off the map. What is going on? And over here on the right-hand side, we see a list of possible issues that are coming up. What are things that are driving these problems? Well, it's telling us right off the bat, wildfire. Here, let me zoom in so you can see this. Wildfire, 98%, bad internet connection, 80%, 70% chance of unicorns seems to be the issue. Well, okay, well that's great. Okay, well, it does, to just have this one page would break a central tenet of the class. You have to be fully transparent about what's going on. How does this happen? So we're going to click in here. It's going to tell us what the potential issues are. But if we click over here on Learn More, it's going to start walking us through how the system came up with how it auto-detected this particular answer. So it says here there was a dramatic decrease, how it evaluated that. It selected a sample size to start doing a test with. It started doing references between that group and with a historical test group, and presented those issues to the user. So it brought it through it. The data is transparent, and it was actually very simple. And this is a model that I've been seeing a lot more with students, and I think there's been more tools that we've been seeing from students as well in terms of exploring the results that come from an automated system. It's a pattern that's become very popular. We're really excited about it within the class as well. Let's see, so we have, those are previous projects. This year we're working exclusively with Disney. Disney's a really fascinating project fascinating company to work with, because their stuff is something we can all relate to. We've all seen Disney movies, and because it's something we can relate to, it's very easy for us to talk about it internally. We've got a whole interesting data set we're working with. I hope to maybe show it again in a year or so, but if this semester is any sign of things to come, it's very exciting. I have at least four students here I want to call out. I know there's a couple more, but I knew of these 4 beforehand. We have Leona. Leona, where are you? She had hi there. Hi, Leona. Hi there. We have Ray. Ray, where are you? Hi, Ray. How are you doing? Chen. And Chen's right over there. She's like they're all the way in the back. And we have Teresa right over here. If you're interested, you can ask them about the class as well. And they all did pretty fantastic work. Okay, so I guess I have a couple more socks. For a couple more. We got 1, 2, and do we have any more questions? I guess is really what it comes down to.
So with the analytics tools that you used today, you showed us Zoom data, you showed us Tableau.
Yeah.
Do you have any preferences for the tools? I know you worked with Zoom data, so you probably feel like you like that.
I do have a preference for Zoom data. In terms of tools, I'm actually a very big critical fan of Tableau as well. I think there's things it's really good for, but I also have a great deal of respect for it. There's things I really like about Click to boot. And if I can get my hands on things, I try to take a look at them. I'm pretty curious about things.
Thank you.
Yeah, so you showed a lot of applications with annotation features.
Yeah.
What happens when the underlying data changes? Like there's a correction or like new data comes in. What kind of best practices have you seen for allowing people to understand either what has changed or if the annotations are no good anymore? Or
well, you could follow a couple of heuristics. How fresh is the data? When is the last time anybody cared? And obviously the data's changed, right? And you can also say, you can also look at like what's the view that was looked at. If it was raw data, maybe it doesn't matter. I mean, you can. I would say you can put global alerts, say, show things that I want to show me if things have changed. You can put alerts at like a local level as well. But I would primarily be doing things based on the frequency of use, who's actually looking at it, and then kind of using defaults after that.
Do you think Tableau is good for a very large organization that
Yes.
has a lot of data?
Yeah, Tableau is a great tool. Zoom data is a great tool too. Might want to look at that as well.
What tools do you use to create custom visualizations when there's a bespoke need from the user? Let's say proportional selective brushing, which nobody does.
Proportional what?
Selection brushing.
Oh, okay, yeah. So you could use, I think you can use eCharts. Have you ever heard of eCharts? eCharts is a really cool graphics library from Baidu. Most of the documentation is not well done in English. So if you know someone who can read Chinese, it's helpful. That would be the first thing I would suggest to take a look at.
Going back to when you were asking questions in the beginning about what you think are potential barriers for people trying to learn analytics, and we were talking about jargon, I was curious if you've seen anything in UX design that eases that barrier, like whether with visuals or some other teaching tools.
I'm so glad you asked. So,
Where's the sock?
do you have a sock yet?
I do not have sock yet.
You get the there we go. Well, sorry, there we go. What I will do, I use one of my favorite services called Mechanical Turk, which is a service from Amazon where you can use it for surveys. It can be used for all sorts of crazy things, but basically it is people who have signed up to say they're willing to do small jobs, and you can connect them through an API. I will create basically kind of a survey, and I will ask them to evaluate a piece of interface, and I'll say, what would you call this thing? So try to come up with some very neutral language around it, and then I'll ask maybe 100 people. I'll target United States, people in the United States in particular. And then I will look for the most common phrases. Let's say there's 5 phrases that seem to come up more often than not. And then I may do a second survey and say which of these 5 terms do you think best describes this feature. So I'll do a couple of surveys. One is to get raw ideas as to what it should be and just look for those trends. Basically, I want to call it what people would naturally call it, if I can. Does that answer your question?
It kind of does, but I'm wondering as well, like, for words that already exist and are kind of cemented into the industry right now, it seems like it would be hard to change them. Do you think there's any way that we can mitigate that difficulty for people new to analytics?
So you want to change what are already common words?
Well, I imagine that if you were using Mechanical Turk, like that would be like for a new interface or something. But if there are already like well-established words, then it might be harder to change. But you notice people stumbling over them a lot.
Okay, so yeah, that's just like, I'll be honest, that's like a tough problem about building software. It's a good problem to have, like people that use your software and are paying for it and been using it for a long time.
Right.
But like I showed a picture of Bloomberg Terminal before. That thing looks very similar to what it looked like a couple of decades ago, and I think it behaves pretty similar in a lot of ways as well, because people get so used to that little like muscle memory as to
Yeah,
how
and
to
I
look
hear
at
you
things.
can even get like a special terminal keyboard for it.
Yeah. So I'll be honest. I've seen people. I don't have a great magic bullet for that one. I've seen people try to create new products altogether, and then they actually kind of like they break them off and see what works and what doesn't work. That's a tough problem. I don't have a great solution for that one.
I see. Thank
But
you.
I'd love to hear if you do dig up something great.
Well, no, I just imagine, even if you come up with terms now, probably in the future, like people 20 years from now would be like, I don't know what that word is. So I was just curious.
Yeah, it can happen.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
So you talked about.
Hang on for the mic.
Okay.
Thanks, Kim.
I'm bad at projecting, so thank you. You talked about a lot of methodologies for increasing the shareability, usability, visibility of what you're actually looking at. But for instance, me and Ben here work at a startup. We're 30 people. You only have time to work on so much. So prioritization always ends up being, for me, the bottleneck of these problems.
Yeah.
Is there a heuristic for what to work on, given your constraints there?
Yeah, like if you're doing a usability test, you mean, or something along those lines? Or?
I guess, is it contextual to the specific problem that you're working on, or how do you rank working on a feature for sharing the data, making that easier versus making the data easier to pivot on? Or
Yeah, so I would say that you will, in my experience, you work on one piece at a time, and hopefully you come back to the pieces when you can, where you can, or you have it's distributed enough of a company, which 30 people, you don't really have enough people to tackle everything.
Right.
But I would try to keep my eyes and ears open for, through analytics, like what are people working with, what are they not working with, and trying to look for warning signs that way, where they're not clicking on that you expect them to be clicking on. Doing some very broad case usability studies regularly. So if you comes usability test Tuesday, and you have some very broad usability tests that you're putting people through, that has a tendency to bring up some particularly like broad problems that you come up with as well. Other than that, you're going to just have to schedule it out and try to figure out what are the biggest pains for people.
So our organization is in the process of implementing a new BI tool, and we used to have a pretty rudimentary BI tool in the past. And so I was just wondering how you sort of like wean people off of like the Excel pivot tables into these new visuals, and I found that our users have a really hard time doing that. So like any advice as to like how to move from like a straight up tabular format to more visuals? And
well, I'd love to tell you about what we're working on right now, what we've been doing this semester. Without knowing a lot about your platform, it's hard for me to give you specific advice. Looker? Okay, so and having done, I looked at it like 2 years ago. I don't know what it's like right now. But I'd love to tell you about what we're doing right now, if that's okay. Yeah. It's sort of an in-between solution. So we talked about Disney. One of the key personas we have is one of these people who doesn't want to look at spreadsheets. And that's actually our key persona, and our job as UX designers in the class is to make her want to use the tool. Some of the things that are coming up are invites, social invites, integration with good social tools, like getting it into the communicative fabric of the organization. Great Slack integration is something that seems to be coming up quite a lot. How do you share those results with other people? If someone's sharing stuff with you, and that becomes a communications vehicle for it as well, you're drawing them into using that application. So really we're seeing the social aspect as the best potential way to draw more folks into it. Does that help?
yeah, it does. I didn't think of that. I guess if they're sharing with each other, then I'll use it more. I think it's just like visually, it's just so different for them that I'm having a hard time showing them the text, or like, am I over visualizing? Like, does it need to be visual? I just having trouble with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's change management. Let's see. I would say you'd want to. Have you done training along the? Oh, you haven't done it. That seems like a good start. Okay. So it sounds like there's a number of things you can do to draw them in. So training, talking about it. We have people even rewarding people for it as well. I can't believe how like $25 gift certificates or socks. Did you see how crazy people went for socks today? Socks aren't really that expensive. You could really get your whole organization up and running. Good pair of Columbia socks. Any other questions? Great. All right. Thank you very much, everybody. It's very nice to have you here.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you all for coming tonight. I hope you all have a great holiday. We'll be back in the new year with another event here on January 9th. Our event on January 9th will be Designing AI Before It Designs Us. We'll have Daniel Huss, a product manager at State Street Corporation, He'll share lessons learned from building his AI-powered fintech product, and he'll establish a set of questions that designers and anyone developing products that utilize AI can use as guideposts. So we hope to see you here back on January 9th. You can sign up for that event now on Meetup, and stick around for a little bit longer and say hi to a new person, and we'll see you next month.